The number one most important thing to think about um, as you are creating your brand is your number one thing ultimately. But the most impactful partner you might have to work with is your manufacturer. So, we're going to talk about manufacturing. If you haven't seen the overall video yet where we drew out those 5 key points, go ahead and go watch that. We'll have a link maybe now, somewhere in the video. But manufacturing, let's talk about what it looks like with manufacturing from a new brand development perspective. So we talked a little bit about formula. Format, obviously, you need a manufacturer who is going to be able to make the product type you're interested in. But you also need to understand what the manufacturer is going to do with your formula. You can get manufacturers that will help you create your formula. You get manufacturers that provide your white label. If you're going to go white label, the manufacturer is likely the person who owns that formula. Um, but you got to make sure that you understand what they're doing, who owns what, right? So if they're selling you a white label, there's going to be a contract relative to that and what you are able to claim, who owns the formula, those types of things. And sometimes if they are a formulation group and they help you create a formula, there might be some sharing of the intellectual property, that formula. You might have to pay a little extra to maintain total control. Just really understand what's going on with that as you're looking for partners and scheduling some plans for your brand. Now, manufacturers, they really kind of gravitate towards two primary groups. And this isn't mutually exclusive. There's a few that are in the middle, but it from a business perspective, think about it from the manufacturer side. The manufacturer is obviously trying to make as much money as they can. Um, and they need to have a margin on top of their cost or their expenses to be able to stay a business, to grow, to increase their ability to service clients like you. And so as a company will grow, as a manufacturing company will grow, their cost also grows, which means that their margins have to maintain, right? So, a margin, it takes the cost into account and factors that into the ultimate price. So their prices need to increase or their volume needs to increase, right? So a manufacturer needs to stay competitive. They need their prices to be competitive. So if you have a higher cost, you need to make more money. And so you do that by increasing your volumes. Your volume, if you do larger batches of manufacture, it spreads out that cost and it makes your margins better than if you were to do a small batch. And so you see a lot of larger organizations, larger manufacturing groups, as they grow, their MOQs start to increase. They start to get a little bit more exclusive on what brands they're wanting or willing to work with. And their quality is great. They've got, obviously it's worked for years. If they're large enough to grow, they've been around for a while. They've got a good track record. Again, you can see some long enduring companies that may not have great quality, but I think that's the exception, not the rule for sure. So you have think big companies, large MOQs, good quality, good systems. Sometimes they might be kind of hard to get a hold of, especially if you're a smaller brand. They may not even be willing to take you on. But then you have the opposite end. You've got the really small, sometimes even what we refer to as a boutique or a kitchen style manufacturer. This small boutique manufacturer is more than likely going to be your research partner. So they're going to help you do some of your formulation. That's kind of what they're structured around, is development. Um, but they would likely struggle with scale. A lot of times they need to keep their overhead down, so they might not have the largest equipment. They might not have a lot of employees. Um, and so they will struggle generally, again, with scale. As you start to increase your order volumes, you might exceed their capabilities. They also may struggle with quality. And so because they're a formulator primarily, or they have other elements that they work with within your brand development, they might not focus on the quality aspect of manufacturing. And so pay attention to those kinds of things. And we'll talk about quality a little bit more specifically in the next video. But that's really your picture into, or your snapshot into, the manufacturing side. I'm a manufacturer. There are a few of us that are unique in that we sort of play in the middle ground, that just because of our history and how we were founded and what we ended up having from an equipment perspective, uh, it allowed our costs to be pretty small. So we can kind of help with those early projects formulation through your first few years of scale. But eventually, even with us, we're going to hit a point where it doesn't make sense um, to keep you as a customer. If you become a million order quantity, it just you'll kick out most of our other customers, and it becomes difficult to put all of my eggs in that basket. And I would pass you on to another manufacturer that would be able to facilitate your needs at that time. Which brings up a really interesting point is that within this industry, manufacturers tend to share work back and forth relatively often, and it's pretty cool. So if there are smaller orders that a larger manufacturer can't fulfill, still reach out to them if you like them or you've got a good referral or something because they can point you in the direction of someone who can help you. Similarly with the small manufacturer, look for reputation. That's really important, but mostly you need to talk to these people. If they're responsive, that's a good sign. If they're transparent, that's a great sign. It just shows that they're willing to stand behind what they've built. Um, and a good educational partner in manufacturing that is transparent and willing to really like be a part of your brand is worth its weight in gold. And so spend your time as you're making some of these decisions. Don't get yourself locked in contracts that w- uh, require you to sacrifice a lot of your value or have minimums that you're not sure you're going to be able to fulfill. There's a lot of manufacturers out there, and you could likely find one that fits you better than all or most. So spend your time looking around. If you want to talk more specifically about manufacturing, um, again, we're not going to touch on quality necessarily yet. Quality will go into the next element, but reach out. Let's chat. Let's figure out what your goals are. Then again, if we can't help you with manufacturing, then we'll point you in the direction of somebody we know that can. Um, and if you got questions, we're here. Good luck. Let's go disrupt.